When you think of the most haunted places in the world, cathedrals probably aren't the first place that comes to mind. Cathedrals and churches are often places of great joy where people go to celebrate their faith, but every now and then, a church will be so haunted it'll drive priests insane. Such is the case with the faceless monk of Nidaros Cathedral, which has earned its site the reputation of being one of the most haunted cathedrals in the world, and it's a reputation that may just be well deserved. The faceless monk of Nidaros Cathedral is also known as the ghost of Nidaros. This ghost is said to haunt the main altar in the cathedral. The story goes that if you visit the cathedral at night and walk up to the altar, you'll see a shadowy figure of an old man walking back and forth near it. He appears to be a monk, but he doesn't have a face. Some say the only part of his face that is visible is a pair of glowing red eyes. If you look away for even a moment, the monk vanishes without a trace. To be honest, this isn't the kind of ghost that sticks around for explanations. In fact, there are many accounts of people who have seen the ghost and then run out of the church as fast as they can. There are even reports of entire groups of people who see the ghost running away from the site in terror, but there are other more convincing reports as well. Many priests have claimed to see the ghost of the faceless monk. Some say that the monk appears out of nowhere and then walks right through them, sending chills down their spines. Other priests have reported hearing the sound of footsteps pacing back and forth near the altar long before seeing the monk himself. Some stories about the faceless monk are more terrifying than others. In 1567, a priest was saying mass late at night when he suddenly heard chains dragging metal moans. Then he saw the ghastly specter of a man dragging himself closer and closer. The priest tried to carry on with the mass, but he could hear the man dragging himself closer and closer. Eventually, the sounds grew louder and the priest looked up to see the apparition standing over him. It was a skeleton dressed in the robes of a monk. Then it did something that made the priest absolutely lose his mind. The skeleton raised its finger and pointed directly at the priest. After that, the priest ran out of the church and never returned. There are many similar stories like this throughout history, and they all add to the legend of the faceless monk. But who is he? What makes him pace endlessly by the altar? And why does he appear to be missing a face? There are several legends that attempt to explain the origins of this haunting. But before we get into those legends, let's take a moment to talk about what really makes this story interesting. Most ghost stories are considered fake. Even the ones that seem to have the most evidence often have reasonable scientific explanations. For example, ghosts often appear and disappear suddenly, and we know that our eyes play tricks on us all the time. Ghosts are also often seen in places where light is dim or non-existent, and we know that our brains can fill in the blanks when there is no visual stimulus. But this story is different. People have been seeing the faceless monk here for hundreds of years, and it scared away dozens of priests. That doesn't sound like a trick of the light. And when we look at the legends that attempt to explain this haunting, things get even weirder. Legend has it that the faceless monk used to be a living, breathing person. He was once a monk who lived inside the cathedral, but one day he went too far. According to legend, he committed a terrible sin. Some versions of the legend say that he killed someone. Other versions say that he simply looked at another monk lustfully. Whatever the case, he was found guilty and sentenced to death. The monks threw him in a well inside the cathedral and left him to die. They were hoping that he would drown, but when they pulled him out of the well, he was still alive. So they dragged him up to the altar and beat him to death. They didn't want his body to remain in the cathedral, so they took it out and threw it in a nearby river. But the monk wasn't done haunting just yet. His spirit stayed in the cathedral, unable to find peace. And eventually, it started appearing to visitors and locals alike. But that wasn't the end of his torment either. When archaeologists discovered the skeleton of the murdered monk centuries later, they noticed that his skull was missing. They have no idea what happened to it, which adds to the mystery of the faceless monk. Perhaps his restless spirit is searching for his skull even in death. A legend like this is sure to make any place feel haunted, but there's more evidence that the story is true than just stories of people seeing a ghost. We know that there was a brutal murder at the cathedral sometime in the past because there are skeletons buried beneath it. Archaeologists have discovered several skeletons hidden in the foundation of the cathedral. They believe these men were murdered and buried underneath the floor. One of these skeletons is particularly disturbing. It belonged to a man who had been brutally beaten to death. He had multiple wounds on his head, neck, and chest. He was likely tortured before his death. And to make matters worse, archaeologists believe this man was intentionally beheaded. To this day, they have no idea who he was, though they suspect he may have been a local bishop. And while this discovery was fascinating, it's not concrete proof that the legends are true. We want to know for sure if the skeleton was a victim of a crime, or if there was a brutal murder at the cathedral until we find hard evidence. But we do know that there have been suspicious deaths at the cathedral. Over the years, several priests have died under mysterious circumstances. Some have died in strange accidents. Others have passed away seemingly out of the blue. These deaths are so suspicious that some locals believe the faceless monk is cursed. Anyone who sets foot in the cathedral is doomed to die sooner rather than later. Of course, this is almost certainly not true, but it's hard to deny that something unusual is going on here. The faceless monk has driven dozens of priests insane, and even more have died under mysterious circumstances. That suggests that there may be some truth to the legend. If this is the case, the truth may lie somewhere beneath the cathedral. Archaeologists have finished excavating the area yet, and they hopeful that they'll find more clues soon. For now, we have to be satisfied with what we know, and what we know is enough to make anyone afraid to set foot in the cathedral. Imagine walking up to the altar to pray, when suddenly a shadowy figure emerges from nowhere and walks right through you. What would you do in that situation? Would you run screaming out of the cathedral, or stand your ground and try to figure out what was going on? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. We've covered many strange topics on this channel, but paranormal activity is always a fan favorite. And this story is one of the scariest we've ever come across. Thanks for watching.